Hello, my name is Steven. I'm from the Sabre School class of 2018. I'm currently an anthropology student at Yale US College, and I just published my very first novel. It's an epic fantasy novel called Vacant Steppes, and I'm here to share about literature and how I think that our writing can make us better people and can make the world a better place. So in this video, I'm going to share three things. Number one, why everyone is a writer. Number two, what I'm specifically trying to do with Vacant Steppes. And three, how you can make your writing better, kinder, and to do justice to the people that you're trying to write about. So on to the first, everyone is a writer. Everyone likes to tell each other stories, whether you're gossiping with your friends, whether you're telling your parents how your day went at school, or even just small things like a Facebook status or a Twitter post, right? All of these are stories that we're telling each other, and no matter the medium, no matter the no matter the form or genre, everyone is telling these stories in this way. And maybe you're doing, one of a few things, right? Maybe you're writing about yourself. You're expressing your own thoughts, you're expressing your own opinions. Maybe you're telling a story, right? You're telling someone about an experience you had or an experience someone else had. Or maybe you're commenting on some social issue that's important to you, Philippine politics, gender, what have you, right? All of these are perfectly possible, and all of these are very viable things to write about. But it is my fervent belief as a person that I think that everyone has something beautiful and something complex inside of them to share. And that if you just tap into that little part of yourself that is complex and beautiful in all of these things, you'll be able to tell the most magnificent stories, no matter what genre you choose to share them in. And the point that I'm trying to make is that we have this, high-minded notion of what a writer is. A writer is someone who sits in their room, um, tapping away at a typewriter, and they're pondering on like the mysteries of mortality and the universe and stuff like that. And there are people that do that. But for me, writing has always been personal exploration. It's been me trying to figure out who I am in a new place, in a new setting, in a new social position, and just kind of grappling with a world that is at many times strange and dangerous and hostile to many of us. It's been my way of grappling with that and my way of illuminating what I think is my truth and my take on this place. And I think that's what writing should be. Writing should be personal. It shouldn't be abstract. Writing should be relatable. It shouldn't be inaccessible. So to the second point, what am I trying to do with Vacant Steppes? Vacant Steppes is very much it's a novel about nomads that are from inspired by Mongolian nomads, right? So there are these nomadic tribes and they live kind of in these tents and then they pack up these tents every few months and then they move to another place. That's why they're nomads. And I got fascinated with this way of life because it's very different from the way of life that I'm used to. I grew up in Manila, moved to Singapore, both very big cities, both kind of focused on this, I suppose, Western notion of you have a permanent house, you have a job that you go to, and you go with public transport to that place. But these nomads, they live a very different kind of lifestyle and they have a very different social structure. And this novel was really me trying to understand how that kind of person would think and feel in this different place. So I'm going to read you a very short excerpt from my novel. This is from a very early stage. Sarah rolled her eyes and patted her horse on the neck. She clucked, and thankfully the creature followed along, turning and leading her horse out of the stable and into the open air. The wind was merciless today, but Sarah was thankful for it. The wind made the sun easier to bear. Her horse turned north, and her hair whipped back in the wind. Before long, Kulan was galloping alongside her, while Ganbold and the rest were struggling to keep up. Sarah was glad to be finally free of the tent and the camp. The wind whipped past her with increasing speed, and her horse's hooves clomped on the grass like the pounding of a rainstorm. The wind howled, and the hooves pounded, yet Sarah had never felt such peace before. She was free. The village disappeared behind them, and there was nothing but the open sky above them. The world never seemed so big as when she was out on the plains. Out here, there was no cover, no shade, no sanctuary in the sea of grass, save for the occasional mound of dirt and a lonesome tree. They rode like this for half an hour before Sarah could feel the terrain changing. Her horse began to pant with the effort of going uphill, and soon she could see their destination. The hills towered over them. But Sarah knew their crags and curves. She had weathered them many times before. She wished she could climb one of those hills and watch the plains from above, but she couldn't do it today. So that's the excerpt. And this kind of setting of wide open skies and horses galloping through the plain. It's something so different from me. But the social issue and the idea that I'm really trying to get across with this novel is that just because something is different does not mean that it is inferior. I think that we look at people that are different from us and say these people are inferior or these people are disgusting, even to that point, right? But I think that writing is really an exercise in empathy, in understanding people that are different from us and seeing that they're not so different after all. So, last, how are we able to write better and write for people better? Because those are different things, right? Um, One thing that I want to make clear is that, especially when you are writing about a particular community that you are not part of and a community that is less privileged than you. So, for example, if you are writing about, say, LGBTQ plus people, if you're writing about racial minorities, if you're writing about gender minorities, if you're writing about women and you're a man, right, then you need to make sure that you represent these communities faithfully. And if you are in a different social position, then it is admittedly very difficult to represent their lives and their stories faithfully. So if you want to do it, you need to do it right, and you need to do it with the proper research. Because in many cases, we are speaking for people that cannot speak for themselves. It's only very recently that stories about queer people are just beginning to reach the mainstream. But for a long period of time, they didn't get the chance to tell their stories. So in many cases, we are speaking for people that don't have the same privilege that we do and don't have the same privilege to speak back if we do the wrong thing. So we need to make sure that we represent them faithfully. So there's three kind of tips that I can share for doing that. Number one, to do your research. And research comes in the form of speaking to people, going online and learning about what these representations look like, and also being aware of the pitfalls, right? Because there are all these stereotypes, right, about the ways in which people are of particular communities are represented in popular media, right? So, for example, there's the trope of the gay sidekick who doesn't have a story of their own and only exists to make these kind of jokes about being gay, right? So, for example, best example I can think of is that guy Damien from Mean Girls, right? He doesn't really have his own story. His main character trait is that he's gay. So be aware of those pitfalls and make sure that you don't fall into them as you're writing. Second tip, to make sure that these characters are not mouthpieces of their entire community, right? So, for example, let's say you have a Muslim. Don't make that one person a spokesperson for everyone that is part of the Islamic faith. There are different perspectives, and you want to write in such a way that you acknowledge those different perspectives. So you can do this by, having different kinds of characters, different takes, different perspectives, all within the same story. Because you can't just have one character, you need a diversity of perspectives. And the last tip is to make sure that these people are still characters in and of itself. And this goes back to my example about Mean Girls, right? You want to make sure that your characters are not just defined by their oppression, right? If you have, say, let's say a Muslim character, their entire experience should not be defined by just the fact that they're Muslim, because they're also, say, they're also really passionate about, say, poetry. They also have parents, and they have all these different dreams and aspirations. And to reduce all of that to simply just one character trait is ridiculous. So you want to write characters that are concerned with different things and are characters in their own right. They are not just representatives, and they are not just their oppression. So that's kind of all I wanted to share with you today. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate my last point to say that writing is powerful, and we should be proud, and we should be in awe of the kind of power that writing has to change perspectives, to introduce people to new ways of life, to make people understand and empathize with people that they've never met before. I think that that's an extremely powerful tool. And it's because it's powerful that we need to make sure that we do it right, and that we write with humility, that we write to do justice, and that we write with kindness. That's all I have to share with you, and I cannot wait to see what kind of work you will produce. Have a good teen read week, and I hope to talk to some of you soon.